Let's talk some chess. This game was played in 1916 under some pretty insane circumstances. It takes place in a hospital, and Alexander Alekhine is playing a blindfold simul. So he's playing many people at once, wearing a blindfold the entire time, hoping to somehow equalize the playing field. And as we'll see, the playing field is not equalized. He's playing someone here named M. von Feldt, who unfortunately we do not have a picture of, but Alekhine opens us up with e4. We have e6 by von Feldt, d4, and d5, so very normal moves so far. Knight to c3, adding some protection to this e4 pawn, which is threatened by the pawn on d5, and now knight to f6. So very solid moves from von Feldt, doubly attacking this e4 pawn. Alekhine doesn't defend it, but moves it away and captures on d5. We have knight captures on d5, and now knight to e4 by Alekhine. So sort of the first strange move of the game, not trading knights or maybe putting the bishop on d2, but moving the knight on e4. And usually it's not a good idea to move the same piece twice in the opening, but this is Alekhine and he can do what he wants. Especially, yeah. So we can't really question this now. We have f5 by von Feldt, so this comes with an attack on the knight, but it does open up the king side, which will be an issue later in the game, and Alekhine just saves his knight by moving it to g5, and it's protected here by the bishop on c1, so the queen cannot capture the knight. We have bishop to e7. Now two pieces are attacking the knight, and now it is threatened to be captured. So Alekhine just brings it to f3. And this knight has made a lot of moves, again, made a lot of moves, and again something that you don't want to do in the opening, but we'll see how Alekhine uses it to his advantage. We have c6 here. This is not the best move. You want to develop your pieces. You don't want to sort of move this pawn and cement a knight that's already cemented on d6. And this allows the kind of maybe final idea behind this galloping knight, putting the knight on e5. And now this is a monster knight. The knight is just controlling a ton of important squares. There's no way to easily kick this knight. There's no pawn on d7 or f7 that could kick this knight away. And this is the problem with basically Alekhine's opponent didn't take advantage of these many knight moves all over the place. You can see there's no real pieces, no development. The king is still on e8. So if your opponent is moving a piece around a lot in the opening, the same piece, it's important to take advantage and develop your pieces and set up an attack, protect the king. But here, basically, von Feldt has nothing to show for this very powerful knight on e5. So he tries to remedy that quickly by playing kingside castle. So now the king is on g8. Alekhine puts his other knight on f3, so knight g to f3. And now if this knight is captured, it's replaced by a fresh knight on e5. So just really cementing this position. We have b6, and this is, again, a problem. This is preparing to fianchetto the light-squared bishop, but that's not really important in this position. The better move here would be knight to d7, threatening, this knight on e5. Here Alekhine might trade, knight captures, bishop captures, and then sort of continue normally, but this would be better, and I think even an even position for black. But here, b6, not as good because it allows Alekhine to play bishop to d3, and get this bishop into the game, so this b6 move is just too slow. We have bishop to b7, fianchettoing, and we'll sort of see why it's too slow in a moment. Alekhine now castles kingside, and so the king is safe, and the knight is still on e5, and that's all good, that's totally fine. And now we have rook to e8 by von Feldt. There's no real, again, probably knight to d7 is better, kicking this knight on e5, but yeah, I'm not really sure about this rook move, but probably intimidating to be playing Alekhine in a hospital. We have c4 by Alekhine, kicking this knight away from d5. So, just pushing the knight back. The knight retreats here to f6, and now bishop to f4. So really nice moves. Just getting the pieces out, getting these pieces very active. And now the bishop is preparing to replace the knights on e5. So this e5 square is just going to be controlled by Alekhine no matter what happens, and that's going to go very well for him. Here we have knight b to d7, finally threatening this e5 square, but now we get queen to e2 by Alekhine. He's starting to develop this sort of other idea, which we'll see come to fruition. The engine actually recommends here, the first move it recommends is giving away the knight on f7. But I'm not going to talk about that line because it's going to spoil the main line, which we will talk about in a few moments, so stay tuned for that. So queen to e2, And now c5, opening up this diagonal for the light squared bishop. You're threatening this d4 pawn, which is protected, but you're threatening the pawn. You have the alley for the bishop, so it seems reasonable. But now, now Alekhine plays his... well, we'll show that move because we just showed that move in the computer line. Alekhine plays this knight to f7 move. And now it's looks like a very weird move. Obviously, whenever you make a move like this, there has to be a threat. The threat here, if you ignore this move, is knight takes queen, which is quite good for Alekhine. So you have to kind of capture and get rid of this knight, and Von Feldt does with king takes on g7. But now Alekhine plays the finishing move to essentially end the game. So take a second and see if you can find the winning move here while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay, here it is. So you just gave away a knight on f7. Why not give away a queen on e6? It's queen to e6 with check, picking up the pawn, checking the king, and this is just completely game over. So this is a really crazy, I mean, out of nowhere, right? The king looks very, very safe on g8, and now all it takes is this knight to f7 move to just send everything asunder. And I think, let's just turn on Stockfish for a second. Yeah, the best thing here is to move the queen, but then you get the same, yeah. So the best idea here is to ignore the sacrifice and just make the queen more safe, but then you get queen takes on e6 anyways, and now you have discovered check coming from the knight moving away. You know, the king can't move to h8. If you ignore this and you play a6, then knight to d6 will pick up the queen because there's a discovered check. So, you know, we can't really blame Von Feldt here. There's, you know, it's not the best move to capture the knight, but there's no real better. The other moves are just as bad. They're just as losing. So king captures knight, and then the beautiful second of the two sacrifices, queen takes on e6. So what's the idea here? Obviously, the queen is checking the king, but the queen is undefended. Can the queen be captured? Well, if king captures queen, then we get the immediate checkmate in one, knight g5, and this is checkmate because the knight is taking away these two squares, e6 and f7. The bishop is slicing this way, and the little pawn on c4 is taking away the d5 square. So you cannot accept the queen sacrifice. That would be checkmate in one. Can the king retreat to... Yeah, that's not going to work either. So if the king tries to run away to f8, this knight to g5 move is extremely strong. Now you're threatening checkmate with the queen on e7, and I don't really see a good way to defend this. I actually don't even know how you defend this, so this looks very bad. So the king retreating to f8 is not good at all. So instead, Von Feldt moves the king up to g6, hopefully getting some more breathing room, but now Alekhine just... Well, let's see if you can find the move here to continue the attack and finish the king once and for all, while I give you one more moment. Okay, it kind of looks like you'd want to play knight to h4. Oh, wait, sorry. But then knight to h4 with check. The problem here is that you have king to g5, and now it's kind of tricky to continue this attack because you can't even bring the bishop to e2 with check because then king takes knight, and it's kind of tricky to figure out how to continue from here. So instead, because you're worried about this king to g5 move, instead of playing knight to h4, you just prevent the future king to g5 by playing g4. And now this is a wonderful pawn on g4. It's preventing the king from going to h5. The king is now totally locked in. You can see the queen cutting off these squares, the bishop cutting off these squares, the knight cutting off, the pawn cutting off g5. So the king has nowhere to move. So if you deliver check to the king, it will be checkmate. And we should note that what's really beautiful about this position is that the pawn is attacked twice. It's attacked by the pawn on f5 and the knight on f6. But both of these pieces are pinned. The pawn is pinned by the bishop. It can't move away because then, you know, the bishop is eyeing the king, and the knight is pinned by the queen. So just a really beautiful pawn move that takes advantage of not one, but two separate pins, and takes the king's escape square away. Here, e4 was played, breaking the pin with the light squared bishop, but now, just like we said before, Alekhine finishes the game with knight to h4, and this is checkmate. All the squares are cut off. in a nice sort of diagonal structure, and then the knight is delivering the final check. So yeah, just an awesome game. Pretty crazy to think that this was played blindfolded when Alekhine was playing multiple people. This just gives a sense to his strength as a player, which we all know, but pretty cool to see in action, especially in a hospital. So just not at a chess tournament, but in a pretty crazy setting. So thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Drop a like, drop subscribe, and we'll see you next time.